welcome into HogvilleNET YouTube Live, and good morning. I'm Kevin McPherson, your host. It's still Monday morning, not as early as we sometimes come on, but we've got another show with Intel. I think it's important. We try to stay transparent. We try to give you details about things aside from just the surface stuff. Once we know things that we can talk about, once they become public, then we can share a little bit more. And so that's what we're going to do today. Is Arkansas now has a filled up schedule in terms of weekend after weekend after weekend of consecutive official visits, mostly with top tier 5-star guys. You do have some upcoming visits with players just outside the 5-star realm that doesn't degrade from the level and the quality of the player in my eyes, because I've seen these guys play and I understand the connection with Calipari and why he's prioritized guys the way that he has, and I understand the value they could bring, and I look at what he's done historically with players. So there's a lot of things that we continue to kind of delve into as we go through the business. The business of official visits is first getting them lined up. We've been giving you intel for weeks, months about finalizing visits. Some of those dates came out sooner, some of them later. But we've got intel on several players today that we know Arkansas has prioritized in this class of 2026. We know that you've already had back-to-back weekends with top 5 rated 5-star guards. When you look at the previous 2 weekends, kind of the start of football season, getting these fall visits in, it started with Caleb Holt 2 weekends ago, so just over a week ago. And then you had Brandon McCoy Jr. Now I have done episodes where I did some deep dives on those visits. A lot more that came out of the Caleb Holt visit than obviously the Brandon McCoy Jr. Visit. But I did do a Sunday segment. So yesterday, giving as much info as I had at the time. I'm still working on some stuff on the Brandon McCoy visit, Brandon McCoy Jr. So go check that out if you haven't already. Also had in between all that content about those 2 players, a lot of other stuff we've talked about, some scheduling updates, both exhibition and in non-con. There's all kinds of content throughout the past week. If you want to get caught up. And I did a special edition sit down with Scotty Thurman, published that on Friday. If you haven't seen it already, go check it out. He had a lot of things to say, including a very strong expectation for this upcoming 25-26 Arkansas Razorback season. If you're trying to get caught up on some of that, we're not going to go through much of that today. So you can go check out those episodes. But we are going to look ahead to upcoming visits. Arkansas is going to have a 3rd consecutive weekend with an official visitor. This is a date that I've known about for a long time. I've been saying over and over on these shows that once Abdou Toure's visit was finalized, and he told me he was going to drop the date soon. I knew the date, but I was asked, look, just let him do it the way he wants to do it, whether that's using Tipton or somebody on the national stage, which is what ended up happening. Just hold that to yourself. But what I was telling you, and I couldn't marry the 2 together, and I had to be careful with it, was although Calipari's had a track record the last 2 recruiting cycles of setting up priority targets that he's trying to get signed in the November class, everybody got their own official visit weekend. They didn't overlap. You might have had some official visitors in on the same, unofficial visitors, in on the same weekends as those priority targets for the pressing class that was upcoming to sign in November, but you weren't overlapping official visits. And the way that these visits that went public were lined out, you saw that to be the case again. But I said, this was intel, and we talked about it a lot. Don't be surprised if A, that you'll see multiple official visits on the same weekend, and B, don't take that as a sign of, that there's some kind of problem and that's just the best you could do because players had other priorities with visits to other places and you just had to cram it in. I said, no, that would be set up that way to be an advantageous thing in recruiting. It would be a positive, something you're trying to package together. So when we broke the news last week, it was last week where I first reported that Arafan Diane's official visit date had changed again from September 12th through 14th, which is now the upcoming weekend, that he had changed it a week and set it out a week to September 19th to the 21st. Well, that coincides with the visit date, which I'm told is still the visit date for Jordan Smith Jr., the 5-star guard out of Virginia, Arafan Diane, the 7-1 center at Iowa United Prep. So then we were able to say, well, there's an example of doubling up on the weekend, but I had to hold my water because the real choice to double up visitors was going to be Abdou Toure national top 30, has been a composite 5-star, now just outside of that. So he's a 4-star based on the current updated rankings. But the 6'5" wing out of Notre Dame High School in West Haven, Connecticut, he's coming in for an official visit this weekend. It was put out publicly, I believe it was yesterday, by Eric Bossy, the national recruiting analyst, longtime guy, and he's at 247 Sports now. But Toure covered the Adidas All-American camp that took place over the weekend. And Toure was there and got MVP of that, by the way. He won MVP of that. We've talked a lot about that camp in the past because you've had multiple players from Arkansas playing with the Arkansas Hawks program, which is in Adidas, taking part in that prestigious camp. It's the top players on Adidas. They moved the dates around for those camps, but they just did one, and Toure was MVP. Bossy was covering it, interviewed Toure for an article, and that's how Toure allowed, I guess, his official visit date to get out, September 12th through the 14th. So sit down, stay close to the campfire, because I'm going to tell you a little story about when I knew about the Toure visit for September 12th through 14th, and they were lining that up. The reason that the Arafan Diane original official visit went from the late August dates, which ended up then being Caleb Holt. Remember, things change in recruiting, dates shuffle around, those things happen. But the reason it was moved was so that at the time, that's when Arkansas was finalizing the same dates with Abdou Toure. So what's the connection? They both play on the Adidas circuit, Toure and Diane. They're both, played together in MBPA Top 100 camp on that 5-on-5 competition. They were on the same team as J.J. Andrews. So all three of those guys, priority Arkansas targets, on the same team, Calipari and the staff, all out to see him. So there's some things that you think connect. You're like, okay, I can see that. That's why they're bringing them in. Those aren't the reasons why. I mean, those are things that are true, but they're not the reasons why. The reason why those guys were being paired up on the same weekend, Toure and Diane, for this coming weekend, September 12th through the 14th, is because they're both from Guinea. They have played on the junior national team together for Guinea. There's a relationship there that goes beyond the stuff that we normally talk about. And what I was told is, and this is what's interesting, because it's going to help inform us on why Diane's visit changed, because there's a lot of speculation that Diane moved his Arkansas visit out so that he could accommodate visiting Kentucky this weekend, which is where he's going while Toure's at Arkansas. September 12th through 14th, Diane will be at Kentucky. And people have been saying, well, he moved the Arkansas visit because he did that to accommodate Kentucky. That's not true. I'm going to tell the story, and this is the backfill information so that you understand why the staff was okay with having two OVs on the same weekend and wanted this pairing between Toure and Diane. So they played together for Guinea. They played on the junior national team. The last time they were together doing that, I think, was 17U World Cup. That was either last year or the year before. I don't have the precise amount of months that have gone by since they teamed together. They actually played Team USA in that event and got blown out. But one of the coaches and directors, Coach Cass, Kasse, with Guinea, apparently he's really important to both of those players, or at least to the Diane camp, and they want him to come over and be part of the group of people that you're allowed to bring in for your official visit. And so all that was being planned so that he would be in Fayetteville with the families or whoever's guardians, the folks that are representing both Toure and Diane, again, both of them Guinea natives. And that was the plan. There was a scheduling conflict for Cass. And so the only time that he can come is the following weekend, September 19th through the 21st. And so that's why Diane's visit moved. And they wanted to move that out. And so Kentucky then, that opened up the 12th through the 14th for them to visit Kentucky. So it was really to accommodate the Arkansas visit the way it was told to me and why it moved. Because I was eyeballing this visit date, knowing for a while, just sitting on those dates for Toure. And once the Diane announcement came that it was moved, that lined up with what I was told. And now just a follow-up, once Diane moved his dates, I'm like, well, now they're not going to visit together unless Toure also moves his. And so while I was sitting on the dates I knew, I was waiting to see, is he going to move that as well? No, he's not. It's sticking where it is. It went public yesterday. And so I held my water and did what I promised to do. I didn't bring it on the show. I've broken a lot of visit dates here. Some of them I've also done on Twitter when I didn't have a restriction or a governor on my announcement, and didn't, some I have to tell it on the show. Some I waited on. Toure, I waited on, just let him do it how he wanted to do it. Okay, so you've got a little backstory there. So Coach Cass with the Guinea national program, and I'm not sure, or has been, I'm not sure exactly what his affiliations are now, but the plan is for him to come in, travel in, and be part of the entourage with Diane on his official visit. Players don't just come on their own; they bring family members. Sometimes they bring their AEU directors, whatever. I mean, there's many ways to do it. And then for international players, they don't necessarily have all their direct family members available here stateside to do something like that, so they can get it done in more than one way. So that was the goal, was to kind of put all that together on the same weekend. It's not going to work out now, and the reason is because Jordan Smith Jr. has his visit date that's already been planned to Arkansas for a long time, September 19th to the 21st. And so Diane moved out his. Arkansas staff said that's not a problem. I'm told, Kenny Payne, one of Arkansas's associate head coaches, one of two, Chin Coleman being the other. Kenny Payne has been the lead recruiter in this Arafan Diane recruitment. And we know that Kenny Payne is a big man coach above all else. And so it makes sense why that's been a big part of that, the connectivity there. And so Payne was trying to sort through that. And he says, we can work that out where Diane and Jordan Smith Jr. can visit, they entertain two and have two official visitors on the same weekend. I don't think there was a pathway to do three. And so I think that's probably why Toure stuck with the September 12th through 14th. At the end of the day, what does all that matter? I don't know, but I'm trying to give you some fill in some of the blanks for everybody, because a lot of these things move, even for those of us that cover it. There are things that we don't always know, but the more information I get, the more I can't wait to share with you. And so when I can. And so I think it's pretty cool. Some of the wheels that turn in recruiting, it's not just everything, the obvious stuff, NIL. Do you get the first visit? Do you get the last visit? Why did they change their visit date? This looks like a disrespect to Arkansas. You move that out. Now you're going to visit Kentucky first. All these things. And now you know the truth, or at least the truth, the way it's been explained to me. And so it makes sense, because I've known for a while, again, this isn't one of those last minute things where, okay, yeah, that sounds like a great cover story. No, I've known for a while what the plan was, and now what's happened and why Diane's weekend changed. But Toure's the one that's upcoming. So let's talk about that. We've spent a lot of time going through some of this stuff. We're going to jump back to Arafan Diane in a minute to go through his top 5 that he put out the other day. Obviously, Arkansas's in that. And then his other visit dates are out as well. Some good discussion going on in here, I guess. I can't track it very well. You guys know that. Thanks for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm Kevin McPherson. All right, so let's hit a few things with Toure. We've said for a while Arkansas is either the leader or maybe a kind of it's them and UConn in the pecking order. You got a lot of folks out there saying, nah, UConn backed away. It got real quiet. I've said, no, that's not the case. The staff doesn't believe it's the case. It's not the case. You saw Toure splash that big photo on his IG account with folks coming in to see him last week. The photo that he put out side by side was him with Arkansas assistant coach Chuck Martin, and next to that was him with Dan Hurley, the head coach of UConn. UConn out on day one to see him. Chuck Martin out on day one of that open live recruiting period that started Wednesday of last week, September 3rd. And so, Providence is a place he's already visited. That was weekend before last. We'd said that Providence, out of his final 7 schools, was the other team that had really made a push and was probably in that top 3 pecking order, kind of the dark horse there. Depends on who you ask. I've had a source for a while. I've had this published, talked about it here, published in my scale of 1 to 10 articles I've done at HogvilleNET, that I have a source that feels like, Arkansas's the team that's going to get him. Again, a lot of folks talking that Hurley and UConn were out. That's just not true. We'll see what happens here. I think Arkansas, again, is either leader or co-leader, whatever that means. You go, well, how could you be a co-leader? Well, I think it depends really on UConn's close to where he's been playing basketball. It's his backyard, and it's a little different than Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas, who at the end of the day, Calipari took Hurley behind the woodshed and beat him for 2 players that he pursued and tried to get commitments from, period, point blank. So the track record's there. All I've said is don't count out UConn, which is absolutely 100% correct. But at some point, you got to feel good about Arkansas's chances here. I've had it as an 8.5 on my scale of 1 to 10 confidence level in Calipari getting past the finish line. We've known for a while again that this official visit was going to happen. It was just, when does he put the date out? Because he told me a couple of times 2 different things. It took a few more weeks. But now you know the visit date. Again, September 12th to the 14th. That's this weekend. The red carpet is always rolled out when Calipari prioritizes players. You got to remember the relationship building is not within a blink of an eye, with very few rare exceptions. There's a couple in this class, guys that are setting up visits. One that I broke, Cole Clower, coming in October 3rd to the 5th. We've given you updates along the way, including Cal and Chin Coleman going and having breakfast with him at IMG Academy. I think it was Thursday of last week, Thursday morning. And then Chase Foster, who also plays at IMG Academy. Both of those guys were late offers. Toure has been on Arkansas's radar for a while. Remember, Toure took the unofficial visit to Arkansas last October. He was there when Chris Sinak, class of 2025, now at Houston, will face the Hogs in December, late December, in the New York City area. We're still trying to figure out exactly where's that game being played, hearing different things. But Chris Sinak was on an official visit. And you had 2 unofficial visitors the same weekend. Arkansas football hosted LSU. Shaq was in town. Remember that? Showed up at the same place where the recruits were at for dinner with Arkansas coaches. And Shaq comes walking in, I guess shamelessly, because LSU was in town. He was there to make sure they saw him. And it ends up Sinak goes to Houston anyway. But I digress. Toure was on that visit. He was at that dinner, as was class of 2027, Devin Cleveland, who was taking an unofficial visit recently, picked back in July, or was it early August, sometime in there, officially got his Hog offer, has again already been on campus. So you know that the relationship with Toure has been building. It's not an overnight thing. Calipari's really liked this player. Chuck Martin courtside for just about everything he did. We brought you intel back in June when you were off the shoe circuits, which went from May to July, and then in June you got all your All-American camps, and then high school team camps and scholastic events where coaches are, for the last 2 or 3 years, no, it's been more than that, 4 or 5 years, have been allowed to go out in June and go to these scholastic events. And so it's kind of like a shoe circuit. You got a bunch of teams gathering in one location in your region. It's similar there, but you're playing with your high school team. And so Chuck Martin went to Philadelphia to that regional site and went and watched Toure compete there. It was around the time that Toure interviewed with somebody and was talking about how he continues to talk to Cal. It's a great relationship. Well, that's certainly true. And again, Chuck Martin was the one who was out to see Toure. We just mentioned that in the photos he put out last week. We'll see what Calipari's moves on the road are this week. I'm going to give you some intel when we get back to Arafan Diane about when Cal's planning to go see him. We got an update on that, so stick around because we're nearly 20 minutes in, about 18 minutes in. Thank you for joining HogvilleNET YouTube Live. We bring you stuff you can't get anywhere else. And I hope you like the picture painting with the details. Because again, we could just sit there and say, well, here's the visit date. You don't get to know anything else. It's all this stuff's interesting, and it helps explain why things move and change sometimes. Sometimes it's not as bad as you think it might be, and sometimes it's not as good as it looks. I mean, for a perfect example, I said I'm not going to spend a lot of time on talking about, because I already have in previous episodes, you can go check them out, but the Caleb Holt and Brandon McCoy Jr. visit. Well, the Holt visit got a lot more attention in terms of what came out, and his recruitment's not been as quiet as Brandon McCoy's, and so it's not a surprise that McCoy's visit has been kind of low-key in terms of what's being talked about. But sometimes the great visits, you don't end up with the player, and sometimes the ones that don't sound all that great, you end up with the player. So always keep those things in mind. Same with information as we explain process. Just because something's better than you, it sounds better, the reality of it, than what you were maybe trying to read between the lines, doesn't mean you're going to get the player or both players. It just informs you in real time, or even if it's a little delayed, getting it to you, and it's not real time, of why things happen the way they did. But, getting back now to Toure, this is an explosive. He is what I consider there's some similarities to Billy Richmond III in terms of size and that explosive attack the rim, right in that wheelhouse. And remember, I keep saying this: Calipari bringing in Carter Knox and Billy Richmond in the same class, and then the next class he's bringing in Isaiah Seeley and putting him in that big wing, versatile in some ways for some of them, but different ways. Billy Richmond can play a little on the ball. Maybe Isaiah Seeley can shoot better than the other two. Carter Knox, a guy that's earmarked maybe as a first-round pick, but you're kind of logjam there at that position. Calipari recruits that way. He doesn't care. He's already got J.J. Andrews. He's going after guys like Cole Kloer, who brings other things to the table, but a big wing. Toure, not as big as those two, but explosive athlete, and will be a wing player mostly. If you're thinking, well, why? Well, because Calipari can find a winning formula doing that. So we've talked a lot about that. The other thing with Toure is when you look at, we go all the way back to that Under Armour All-Star game last year where he hit the game-winning shot. And I've talked a lot about that on segments ever since then, but there's just a clutch element about him too. And I think, other than having a productive and really good game that day, he finished it off with a clutch three-point shot. And so the more we talk about Calipari not identifying shooters, the Cole Kloer pursuit certainly shows you that Calipari is all about going in on that shooter, but also some of these other guys don't sleep on their ability to make big plays and hit big shots even from beyond the arc or when something's on the line. So I really like this idea that Toure could be part of this class. Remember, I said if the dominoes fall right, the chips fall right, that Calipari could, based on source information I have, expand this high school class to as many as 5 of the upfront, preferred, hot pursuit types, not just backfilling with guys that are projects later, and that's how you got to 5. Maybe there's a way to get it to 5. So the talking point's been 3 to 4. Maybe if it falls right, you could get to 5. You've already got J.J. Andrews, so you subtract that out to do the rest of the math on what's left to get there. So 2 to 4 more would be a range of what's probably what you're looking at. We've said over and over again, does Arkansas lead for most of the guys they're bringing in terms of what's the chatter out there? No. They don't have to get all of them. They're after a bunch of top-level guys in the backcourt, on the wings, and now on the front court. I mean, Mika Murnin, we keep talking about the Euro Cup. The dude, I retweeted the highlights the other day. I saw him on Twitter. I couldn't wait to retweet them. He's knocking down triples over, the Joker over there with the grown men in the Euro Cup. But he's had a really good, statistically, you look at it and you go, well, what's he really doing? Well, I mean, he's one of the youngest players out there playing up with the grown men that are stars in the NBA, many of them, veteran dudes, and he's out there in his moments and his opportunities, and he's making plays. He looks really good. He looks stronger to me, too. He's crazy athletic. We talk about all that, but Mika Murnin, frontline recruiting, Diane coming in. We're going to talk a little bit more about him here in a second. Obviously, the Chase Foster, 6'8" forward, who just looks like an NBA frontline, an SEC frontline guy. NBA, let's not push that just yet. Top 44 star guy. Played for Team Mello on Nike YBL, one of those late offers at IMG Academy with Cole Kloer. But just looks like a prototypical SEC frontline guy. Really good-looking prospect. So frontline, backcourt, a lot of high-level guys, a lot of guys you're bringing in on visits. We're still waiting to find out the dates for Foster. We'll see if he overlaps with somebody or if he gets his own weekend, which would then push him out past Cole Kloer, which is the last visit that we know about right now that's on the books. That's not tentative. Baba Aladdin, also one of those frontline stretch 4, 3-4 combos that reclassed from 27 to 26. Tentative dates for late October. And we talked about those on one of the segments. I gave you the dates. I think it's the weekend of October 24th through the 26th. And on that Saturday, the 25th, the Football Hogs host Auburn. So you get the football fan atmosphere that weekend. But that one's a little more tentative. The dad kind of wants to wait till you get into early October. Is what he told me to put that out in terms of, yeah, that's going to stick, and now let's get it out there. So we've already said it, but there's that. So front court, back court, are you going to get all of them? No. I mean, because as many as you're bringing in, that far exceeds, it's almost double the amount that at best you're going to do, which is 5. And Calipari sticks to that 3 or 4. So he could just stay to that. It doesn't get to 5, and now you're going to take about a third of who you brought in. So it's not the idea of what chances do you really have when maybe you don't lead for some of these guys. Forget that. You're going to get at least one out of those position groups from each, I believe. I feel very confident about that. I can't say with 100% certainty, but I feel very confident, which means you got more top shelf guys to go with a 5-star in J.J. Andrews. Again, you got him in mid-May. Now, Arkansas last year, I think Arkansas was the first team in the country to get the first 5-star commitment. That was Darius Acup Jr. They were also the first team to have 2 5-star commitments, because I think that's right, or 2 top 10 5-star commitments. at the time when Malik Thomas made his commitment announcement right before the signing date. I think that's accurate. Now, this time around, it's Missouri. Missouri, they got the commitment from Jason Crow Jr. a few weeks ago. We talked about the Tony Bryant factor, the forward out of Florida, the 5-star forward, who slipped a little bit in some of the rankings, but still one of the top players in the country, 5-star by several, if not all, just committed. He just committed to Missouri, so they've got 2 5-stars in this upcoming class. And so Dennis Gates, you got to acknowledge the fact that in both cases, and we talked about this on some of these shows a few weeks ago when it was topical at the time. There were maybe some promises with an open staff, assistant coaching staff being made to folks in the camps. In the case of Crow Jr., his dad, and in the case of Tony Bryant, maybe his coach or somebody in terms of coming in and being hired at Missouri. So we'll see what plays out there. Maybe that stuff that doesn't happen, but he does have 2 5-star commitments now. Arkansas is not going to be stopped on one. I can promise you that in this class. They're just not the first to get more than one. All right, so other stuff we need to talk about. Let's get back to Arafan Diane now. We know that his visit, again, I first reported that last week, September 19th to the 21st, coincides with Jordan Smith Jr. On Friday, he put out his top 5 schools list. We know it's Houston. We knew Arkansas was in there. Kentucky, he's got that visit coming up. Indiana's one has been mentioned at the top in the top list for him. They're getting a visit. Virginia was the surprise in there. Virginia's getting a visit. Guess who's not in there? UConn was making a push for a while there, and now UConn's not in his top 5. There's no published visit list for that. His guardian, Alex Victor, who we talk about a lot because I talked to him a lot, told me before the visit list came out they were only going to take 5. They settled on that. Remember, at one point it was going to be 5 to 7, and then later we told you it'd probably only be 5. Well, he reaffirmed that before they put that list out. List came out, sure enough, it's 5. Can he change on that? Could he add or do something? Sure. But as of now, and where we are now, that's the plan, and that's what they executed in terms of what they announced. So top 5, again, Houston's considered probably the leader there. And Alex Victor told me they were in the lead. Remember, we brought that on here. I guess that was last week when we talked about it. When we talked about the schedule change, we brought that additional info. But he reminded me when we revisited, since I last told you that Arkansas's up there. And we know that Arkansas is probably running second. Kentucky, there's that connection that we first reported to you before with Mark Pope's being married to the sister of the new head coach, the first-year head coach at Iowa United Prep. And so there's that connection. Kentucky kind of got in on him late. They're in on him later than Arkansas is. But a couple of things working for Kentucky is that family relationship, plus Kentucky's one of those programs that's willing to overspend in NIL relative to what others are going to do. And so they'll do that. And they've got, it's not that Arkansas doesn't have the NIL. It's just they make choices that maybe are more prudent for what they're doing and want to do. Calipari's process is a pretty damn good one. It always has been. So we don't second guess that. So anyway, Diane, here's the other intel for you. We reported to you last week when I told you about the date of the OV changing out a week. And then we talked about, some other things. And one of the things I told you was that Arkansas coaches, when they were hitting the road Wednesday and Thursday, their first stops with Diane, what I was told was either Sunday, which was yesterday, or Monday. And that's what we reported here as intel. Well, we have new intel and an update on that. What I'm told by Alex Victor, the guardian for Arafan Diane, is Arkansas coaches are expected to go out Tuesday afternoon or early evening, somewhere afternoon or early evening, maintaining some flexibility there because of other stops you might be making. And but that's the plan. Kenny Payne, again, is the lead recruiter in Diane's recruitment. And what I was told is that Arkansas initially planned to come earlier in the week, but they wanted to bump it out at the request of John Calipari. And so that tells me, without a direct knowledge, that yes, Calipari's definitely going. If Calipari requested that, that means he wants to be there and that he intends to be there, in my opinion. That's the dot connecting I'm going to do on that. If Cal's requesting, hey, give us another day, we're going to try to get out in the afternoon or maybe early evening, somewhere in there. So that's when it's supposed to happen. That's more intel for you that you didn't know. Now you do, is it looks like Arkansas is planning to get out to see Arafan Diane tomorrow, later in the day. I mean, I'm interested to see where that plane's going. We still remember we talked about it. Caleb Holt and Brandon McCoy Jr. with bookend back-to-back weekend OVs set, and Calipari midweek when he can first start going out doesn't go see either guy. He just had Holt on campus, and he knew he was having the other guy. And I said, read nothing into that. This is not about not being a priority. It's about how Calipari moves. He knew he was going to get plenty of time with both of those guys, and he can, work things in more than one way. And he's got command of his recruiting pitch because of his track record. And so he's not in the same kind of urgency or the same kind of pecking order decision making that other schools are, even some blue bloods that, even though they've got a lot of cachet and gravitas, they don't necessarily have what Calipari has, which is that track record getting guys to the next level, being the king of the one and done. How his guys perform once they get to the NBA and then help themselves gain more wealth. There's no one that's ever done it like him. So it's one of those things. His moves, he moves in mysterious ways, but he moves in Cal ways that nobody else is going to replicate or be able to push him into the same talking point box as you would for other programs. So I keep saying this the last few days, don't read in anything to the fact that Calipari hasn't been out to see Holt or McCoy yet. Now, that doesn't exclude the idea that in real time at some point, the parties have moved on and that stop will never happen. What I'm saying is you can't jump to that conclusion or think that's probably what happened based on not going out and seeing those guys yet. And I just walked through that a little bit, which is what we try to do. We don't want to come off as preachy. It's just, doing this stuff, covering this stuff for a long time, being in the trenches, having all these conversations with assistant coaches, head coaches, all these things. It's amazing how optics are shaped by what hits social media, the timing of things and all that. And sometimes they're so far from reality. It's good to remember some of that stuff. Really the only other thing I'll throw in here is Tate Kenny. He's coming up at the end of September. The 5-star guard just took a weekend visit to Oregon. I saw some of the stuff on social media from that visit. He recently visited Indiana. Remember his first visit, August 29th through the 31st. That first weekend was the weekend that Caleb Holt was at Arkansas. And I think it was around that time or sometime in August when he actually visited Kansas. Maybe it was during the quiet period, but he visited Kansas, and Kansas was on popped in, made his finals list, and they got a visit. Well, some of the other teams that made his final 8 or whatever list he put out were Texas, who I told you guys I'd heard that they'd really worked hard in that recruitment. Miami was one he added late and put a visit to, and it was supposed to happen before Arkansas. Well, he took the Oregon visit this weekend, and he canceled visits. This is reporting by Travis Branham at 247 Sports. He's canceled visits to both Texas and Miami. So Arkansas is still the last visit on the schedule, and they're the only visit remaining based on those factors. September 26th to 28th, Football Hogs back home for the first time since Alabama A&M and Fayetteville to host Notre Dame. Big weekend. We'll see if Arkansas does anything else to pair anybody else up with him. We'll be surprised. Calipari out to see him Thursday in the ATL. He plays at Overtime Elite. Kid from Newport, Kentucky. We've gone through the history there. Is Louisville the leader? Is Kansas the leader? They're both Adidas schools. He's one of the stars on the Adidas circuit. They're trying to wrap up a contract with him. Arkansas may be playing from behind, but we've said forever that the relationship with Cal is real. You saw the photo of those two that got put out on social media when Cal was in there the other day, and Arkansas is still getting that visit. And I don't rule anything out when it's John Calipari and you get him on campus. Kenny told me way back in May, I want to visit Arkansas. That's going to happen. We'll probably announce something soon. Well, it took a while. It wasn't soon when it came out, but it's been out for a while. We've known about it. But canceling those 2 visits is, those 2 teams eliminated. Again, Texas was kind of the dark horse in there, if there's such a thing, because of how hard that staff worked. I was told to win that, and they're not going to win it. He'd already taken visits, by the way, if you're saying, well, what about Louisville and Kentucky? He'd already visited those places before we got into this fall setup. He also visited Purdue. Purdue's didn't make his final list. So you look around and you try to read between the lines. We've heard Arkansas was, running a close second to Louisville for a while. Then Kansas really emerged. And now there's some talk Kansas has real momentum. We'll see what's true, and we'll see if Calipari can finish it. But remember, again, let's walk back through it. You have 5-star guards when you look at Caleb Holt, Brandon McCoy Jr., Jordan Smith Jr., and then Tate Kenny. By the time you finish September, Way the schedule's set out now, if nothing changes and gets moved around or gets canceled, that's 4 top 12 when you put Kenny in the top 12 in the high school rank. He's a 5-star. The other 3, all top 5. Is Calipari going to strike out on all 4? No, I don't believe that for a second. I think he's getting one of those guys. And you've got Abdou Toure, who's a wing. Arkansas is in great shape with. And then you go front line again. I mean, Mika Mirden visited last year. It was the best of his visits. He hasn't visited anywhere else that I'm aware of since. Maybe he takes visits. He didn't play spring or summer here in the States. He spent most of his time in Finland, blowing up again over in Euro Cup, Eurobasket, playing against grown men. The 6'10", 6'11", 5-star, top 10 rated in the class of 2026. Stretch 4. Again, Baba Aladat, similar type player. Chase Foster, frontline guy. Arafan Diane, 7'1" center. Got some forward skills, some stretch ability. Some services have him top 10. I've got him 6 as a 5-star. So you got multiple players that are high-level guys. Again, just to finish up, does Arkansas lead for most or all of them? No. Does Arkansas end up snagging from each position group? I think so. I think they do. Again, Cole Clower and Toure joining Toure as at that wing spot. So you got guys coming in that you're bringing in that cover every position group and help you have another top 5 class. Calipari, that's how he rolls. If he doesn't have the number 1 class, it's second or third. You rarely see him slip outside the top 3. And I think we're headed to another one of those. And you were, again, off to a great start with J.J. Andrews, who, by the way, I should be at Little Rock Christian Academy practice later today. That's the plan, unless something changes, to see JJ in the Warriors. He's working on a 3rd state title as he enters his senior season. He won back-to-back 4A state titles a couple of years ago. Was the last one. They moved up to 5A. They made the state tournament, lost to Springdale in that, and to Benton. Benton, which ended up going on to be the state champion in 5A. But J.J. Andrews is looking for that 3rd state title in his 4 seasons. He started, he won the first one as a freshman at Little Rock Christian Academy. All right, signing off. Didn't quite get to 40 minutes. We certainly went well over 30. Took a lot of explaining on my part today. Appreciate everybody for being here. Always do. Be great in all your endeavors. Have a great week. Have a great, hopefully Arkansas football has a great road game against a ranked Ole Miss team. I saw today where the football Hogs didn't get any votes, I guess, in the AP poll. Oh, well, 2-0. Can't beat that. And both 50-plus points against teams you were expected to beat. Now it gets real as you get into SEC play against a team that took you behind the woodshed last year at home, and now you're going on the road hoping to get to 3-0. Until next time, if there's something that breaks that we got to come in and talk about later today, we will. But until next time, thanks for being here. Appreciate all of you. See you soon.